Alright, let's go.
Right, hello and welcome to this episode 21, Matt. 21.
So, you know what? I think that deserves a cheers.
Well, let's get there first. Of the Just Discourse Podcast.
21, baby. We made it.
With your host, Monotone Max, and the man with the lovely name, Matt Harpe.
For anyone who wasn't paying attention previously, you know, you missed out on quite a lot of good quality content there. One of them which being that, statistically, podcasts don't last more than 20 episodes. So we've made it to 21. We're now in the top percentile of all podcasts ever created.
So when you say they don't last, what do you mean? People get bored, they can't be asked?
People just give up. They just stop. Well, because I think a lot of people do it as like a novelty, as an addition to what they already do. Be that, you know, you get like radio presenters or the BBC would be like, oh, look at Phil and Holly's podcast talking about this and that or whatever. Obviously, none of that's happening, Phil. But they'll just do it as like a gimmick as opposed to, no, this is what we do.
Yeah.
Whereas like you and I, this is what we do.
Yeah, we would do this.
Yeah.
Relevant whether we were on the podcast or not. So. Yeah. No, it's good. And I'm sure you've all noticed we've had a slight change up in the studio today.
Yeah, I know. Well, what happened was we had a robbery and they gave us a table. So they robbed us by taking away space from us by putting a table in it.
And they gave us a table.
It's a hard time we live in, you know.
Well, it's the opposite land we live in these days, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what robbery means now, giving people stuff. It's because it's stuff they don't want. That's what makes it a robbery.
Yeah, they probably dumped it,
Yeah, they don't want a table. Got plenty of tables.
Anyway, let's talk about something interesting.
So today, we're going to start off with the time-honoured truism, which I'm definitely using that word wrong, but we're going to carry along with it here.
Go for it.
And topic has existed as long as humanity has. You could say it's the oldest profession, except for selling yourself. And we're going to talk about religion. Now, I'm saying it's a profession, not because that is what his intention was or what the word means, but that is predominantly how it's been used. Like, if you look up into the Middle Ages or Dark Ages of English society, the people that governed everything was not the royals or the landowners, it was the priests. It was the
church.
It was the church. And the reason they could do that is because all of the Bibles were written in Latin. And they're the only ones who could read it. So you literally had to speak to, if you wanted to communicate with God, you had to rely on some guy who could speak a language you couldn't speak.
Well, also a lot of the priests and, you know, people of especially the Catholic Church, I'm sure it happened with many other churches, is they would advise people to sell all their belongings and give them to the church. Hence why the church is still one of the biggest landowners in the world. Probably more than McDonald's, even though McDonald's is one of the largest landowners in the world.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah, I remember listening to, oh god damn, what's the guy's name?
Ray Kroc.
Ray Kroc. When he did a seminar at MIT, and he asked everyone, what business am I in? And they went, cheeseburgers, and he went, nope. They went, fries, he went, nope. And he said, it's location. Because he said, I invest in land. That's what I do.
He's the land business.
Yeah. Superb. But anyway, for the religion part of it, with, like you're saying, with the Catholic Church as an example, they are the biggest landowners, but also they own the most art.
Do they?
Yeah. Have you ever been to Rome?
I haven't, no. I need to get booked in to go to Italy. I'd like to travel across the whole country because it is
Rome.
Here.
Rome is insane. So either go with a good lady or you and I can go, because it's
been to Venice.
Venice, yeah, there you go.
That was nice.
Yeah, well, it's a similar sort of thing you'll have with Venice, like with obviously all the canals and
obviously with global warming. Is it? No, it's climate change.
Climate change. Beg your pardon. Sorry, everyone.
Climate change, because obviously it's changing.
Close the name.
Venice will be underwater soon, so we should probably go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We don't want to see a drowned city unless we're looking for Atlantis. Then we do want to see that.
Yeah.
But with Rome, for example, I went years ago and I was just walking around. A, you can't understand how big this shit is. B, you can't understand how old it is. Like, you don't fully understand the scale of the Colosseum until you actually like stand there and you're like,
what was the Colosseum, like 2,500?
Yeah, years old. Yeah. But if you go into Rome, it's just, have a tour through the Vatican and it's just art everywhere. And art from like Spain, Italy, France, England, Germany, going into the depths of Eastern Europe, a little bit of Russia from there, even other parts of the globe where the church has reached. But like, if you go to the Sistine Chapel and you see that ceiling done by Michelangelo, and you're just looking up, like, first of all, you can't talk, so you have to be there like it's deathly quiet, and you're
that's
like,
where I want to go desperately in Sistine Chapel.
Yeah, you're deathly quiet, and you look up, and you're just like, this thing is like the epicenter of art and religion and God and culture, and you know, the structures that are left that are from ruins are from the Roman Empire, arguably the greatest empire the planet's ever seen.
Yeah.
And they, you know,
Or what about the British? I mean, you're Sri Lankan, you're not going to agree with that one.
I have a special place of hatred and love in my heart for the English Empire.
Right, so you will notice over the last couple of episodes we have had the laptops out a bit more, because there have been a few people that have been moaning about our facts. Now, we are almost 99% true with the facts we have. They're just slightly off sometimes.
And we're going to say true with a margin of error between 1 and 40 points. Carol.
Exactly. So the Colosseum is not 2,500 years old.
See, you're welcome, everyone.
It's very close. It's 80 AD. So it's 1937 years old.
Gotcha. It actually shouldn't be AD, because AD means Anno Domini, which is after death of Jesus. It should be CE, which means Common Era.
Interesting. Why is that?
Because Common Era is we're counting.
It's not religious.
Yeah, Common Era is not religious. Anno Domini is religious. So the previous way of counting is you'd have BC, before Christ, and AD, Anno Domini, after death. Whereas it should be BCE, before Common Era, and then CE, Common Era.
Well, so they've just decided to cut Christ out of it, but he's still going to use his birth as the Common Era.
Exactly, because it doesn't matter what we call it. We're all counting it from the same date.
Also, here's one. Does it start from when he was born or when he died?
That's an excellent
Or
question.
did we just lose 30 years in between him being born?
I'm going to say died, because AD is after death. But it's very interesting, because the Chinese calendar...
But then BC is before Christ.
It is BC or BCE. So, it's a good point. So there's 33 years in the middle that just doesn't count. That's an interesting point. I like that, yeah. What year is China...
The Roman calendar.
No, what year is China on is what I want to know. Because they have Chinese New Year in, like, April, I want to say.
Yeah. Is China on?
Yeah.
It's best I'm coming.
Yeah.
What year is China in right now? Well, funnily enough, they're in exactly the same year as us.
I'm sure they count as a different...
It says, is the Chinese year 4,720?
Okay.
Asian community will celebrate the Lunar New Year 4720 on Chinese calendar, which is the year of the tiger.
Cool.
The tiger was the third animal of the Chinese zodiac.
When is that?
That is on the 1st of February.
1st of Feb, okay. That's way out.
Oh, apologies, that was 22. So that was last year.
So it's 4721 in this year. No, that's going to be 2 years after that. It's going to be 4722.
Hang on. You've got to be careful here.
Yeah, go on.
Because the next one down is 4719. Which is also for the same date.
Wow. See, there's me thinking it was going to be just another set of numbers, but it's multiple sets of numbers. Riddle that one out.
So I'm guessing... That still doesn't make sense, because the next one says 4720.
We'll take whichever was the average.
So unless it's 4721 this year.
So 4721 is what happened. You're saying that was from 2022, yeah?
This is 2022, yeah.
Yeah, so in...
But the next one below states exactly the same date, 1st of February 2022.
Yeah, so...
it says 4719.
So when we get February coming this year, because that'd be 2024, 2 years after 2022, we're going to be 4722.
Who knows? But we digress.
Who knows?
Things we weren't talking about.
Look at that lovely digression. Sorry.
Got to be careful with transgressing these days.
I know. I do like transitional glasses as well. Yeah.
But the main thing we were talking about is obviously religion. And I mean, there's various points we could touch on if we're going to go and move into the religious sector. I mean, what's your opinion on religion in sort of schools and society these days?
So you and the audience may be surprised to know that I grew up in a Roman Catholic primary school. That's where I went to school. Right. Obviously, devout Christian here. As you go. So I was baptized, first communion, confirmed, the whole shebang.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to remember back to that age, whether I believed it or not. I suppose I did, but because I didn't know any different, I don't think I fully comprehended what that meant to like believe in God and Jesus and the Holy Ghost and all of these. No, Holy Spirit actually is what we call them, and then all of the events that happened as part of the Bible. But we had hymns 3 times a day. We had mass every Sunday, and sometimes at school as well. But I think I was just too young to fully understand what it was. I mean, for what we had there, it gave a really good structure.
Yeah.
Sense of community from an act we're all doing together, which is the singing. It did teach us about sort of respect to your elders and your parents, and some of the commandments that Jesus gave, whilst not technically commandments, were treat others as you would want to be treated. So there's some really good tenets there, but I just think I was too young to fully comprehend it. And then when I got to secondary school, I was exposed to a myriad of people of different faiths. I mean, like my primary school was 110 people, and then my year into secondary school was 250.
Jesus, that's
so
a big jump,
a huge jump. And then the whole school was 1,300 people or something like that. So to have that many people in your face, you're kind of there like, Christianity's not the only way to think. So I think at that point I became, because I was so young, I became atheistic, because I was like, oh, if they're all coming with their own version of God, it must be bullshit.
Yeah.
But that's just all the impact I suppose I had when it was young, just in answering your question when I was a kid. Having it in regards to schools, I mean, for me, obviously you can be the judge on it, about how I turned out as a person. Terribly. But I don't know, because imagine if I'd gone to a secondary school that was as religiously focused as my primary was, probably be a very different outcome.
Well, so I actually had the flip side to you. So my primary school was, I guess most schools in the UK would be classed as Christian, but there wasn't any, big push for religion while we were at school. I always grew up. My father is Catholic and my mother is Protestant, but they weren't very. It wasn't a religious household that we grew up in. Like we had to go to church all the time, but we went to church for Christmas and Easter and all the sort of main holidays. I think my mother tried to instill that into us more with the values, as you said, and the tenets that religion itself preaches. But I don't think you necessarily need to get that from religion, but I think it's just the main avenue where people tend to go down, and it's an easier route to instill those into children when they're younger. And then when I went to secondary school, I went to a Roman Catholic secondary school, so we had prayer every day, every morning. We had to, I can't remember what it's called now, which is terrible. The Our Father, whatever it's called.
I know the one, yeah.
Yeah, that one. So I had to do that every morning at an assembly in our houses, and then I think we had, if you were a boarder, which I wasn't, luckily, we had mass every Sunday. But then again, they did the main holidays like Easter, Christmas, and I think that's it. There might be any more. I wasn't really that interested in religion, especially when I was a kid. When we discussed it briefly, is when it was forced upon me, it was more like a rebellious side that I was like, look, I'm really not interested in this. Like, I don't agree with this bullshit. It was more like a younger pushback on what it is. You'd rather mess about with your mates than go to mass, or try and avoid going altogether. So I didn't really think too much into it in my schooling years, and then when I sort of progressed out into college and getting a bit older, because I avoided that side of things, and I believed in science. I still believe in science.
Steady on there, mate.
Like it's a religion. I mean, the science of these days is slightly different to the science that we used to be taught, where it was facts and figures. These days,
Yep.
we know, science can change.
Yep.
Anyway, so that side of things for me, I think, made me more atheistic, and I at a time would have said, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God, etc. It's all sort of make believe. And then as I've grown older and read more, and you've had certain things happen in your life, and you've experienced various different things, that I think, again, I think we've briefly discussed it before, is for me, religion, especially the Bible. I haven't read anything else other than the Bible, so I haven't really got a broader spectrum to comment on, but I can imagine most of them are fairly similar, where they are personifications of like natural events that we've discussed before. The whole Jesus is the Son of God, he walks on water. Well, the sun reflects off of water, so I personally believe the sun is God. I'm sure from before we had books and stuff like that, people realised that without the sun, the crops wouldn't grow, the world wouldn't go around. We couldn't eat, live. We get warmth from the sun to be able to live, etc. So without that, nothing would function. So that's where I personally believe my understanding of religion comes from, and then it's obviously been manipulated into a control system over the years, and people have got lost, whether it's the priests that have manipulated it or the church as a whole, as we said before, because they used to convince people to sell all of their property and give it to the church, hence giving them the power over everybody else, godlike power over everybody else. But I think, in terms of religion itself, it's the main tenets, isn't it, that have the positive effect on people, and you've got to have good values to live by in order to be a better person and project yourself into reality to have a better effect on people.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about it being, many points, but first of all, the original religion of humanity was believed to be paganism, which was
Wasn't a pagan a non-believer?
No. Paganism was the study of nature, and so like the summer solstices, the winter solstice. You would have a lot of like branches and goats' heads and worship of the sun, and the elements were given personalities and gendered, and
they were deified, weren't they?
Deified, as it were, because primitive humans didn't fully understand what was happening. Mm-hmm. So the only way they could comprehend it was to say it was an entity in itself.
They personified it, weren't they?
Precisely. And then that carried on from there. I'm trying to get my timelines right. I think paganism was the first, and then after that you would have had, particularly in Western culture, you would have then had Greek, which would have been Zeus, Apollo, Athena. So they then take aspects, building on from what the pagans did. You still have the nature gods, so you would have had Poseidon, god of the sea, Zeus, the air, Demeter is the harvest in the autumn, so you want to pray towards Demeter, then you get a good harvest, you'll be able to produce enough food to survive the winter coming through. Now the change of the cycles was attributed to Persephone being captured by Hades. Mm-hmm. So because she ate 6 pomegranate seeds while she was in hell, she had to stay with him 6 months of the year. So
and Hades was the lower god,
king of the underworld. Very misunderstood god, really interesting god. But her visits towards hell are what changes the seasons. Mm-hmm. So as she leaves from up here and goes down to hell, the planet slowly dies. Then she comes back, the planet comes back to life again, and then it starts again.
The yearly cycle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's where I sort of developed my understanding from it. I never actually realised that it is exactly paganism. Pagans believe that nature is sacred and that the natural cycles of birth, growth and death observed in the world around us carry profound spiritual meanings.
Yep.
Human beings are seen as part of nature along with other animals, trees, stones, plants and everything else on the earth, blah, 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 blah. And that's why a lot of the, you've got Stonehenge and I think a lot of the pyramids are all were built so that on certain times of the year, like the summer solstice and the winter solstice, they would project light in. Especially, I think for the Great Pyramid at Khalifa, is it Khalifa?
Giza.
Giza. During the winter solstice and the summer solstice, I think the summer solstice projects the sun directly into the king's chamber, and
Yes.
on the winter solstice, I think it projects the moon directly into the queen's chamber.
Cool. The point that we're looking at is that you have these recurring themes throughout stages of humanity, and then these sort of different religions, whether they're existing chronologically or simultaneously. So if you have, like for example, we share the Old Testament with Judaism. I say we. Christianity shares the Old Testament with Judaism. I think they just leave it at that.
As you said, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Judaism and Christian, and probably, if we looked into it, Islam, their gods all have the same story.
Right, well, there's a flood in almost all of them.
Yeah. So
it would suggest that a flood did happen. The idea being that they will coincide.
Is there some type of personification of flooding?
Maybe. It could be that all of evil is washed away and only the good remain. Well, if we're looking at Noah's Ark, I'm at a loss as to what story that's trying to convey.
Every with the seasons again? Is that...
Well, every person on the earth is bad because they don't get on a boat, and Noah gets 2 of every animal, conveniently forgetting out the dodo, and putting it on there, and then coming back down and repopulating everyone with just his wife.
Yeah, it's a bit like the Adam and Eve thing. I know that came way before.
Yeah, well, the Adam and Eve one's very simple. It's just Adam fucks Eve. Eve has 2 sons. The sons say turn fucking Eve. There you go. Very simple.
But then were they supposed to be gods, and then because they ate from the tree of the Garden of Eden, they were banished to...
So they were banished. They ate from the tree because the devil, because obviously there was a devil still at that point, took the form of a snake and tempted Eve with the apple, and then told Eve to give that to Adam. So Eve, technically, according to the Bible, is the great deceiver, not Adam. Adam's innocent because Eve gave it to him, even though Eve was tricked. And God, in punishment, banished them from the Garden of Eden. It says you are now mortal. So they were immortal, but they weren't gods. And all women moving forward will have pain during childbirth as punishment.
Interesting.
But whilst not immortal, according to Genesis, they lived very long lives. Adam lived to be more than 830, something like that.
Jesus, I bet he wasn't drinking Monster.
He was. He was having 4 a day. That's why he lived so long.
That's why I did it.
Exactly. And all of the angels drink Red Bull.
Do they? Is that what gives them wings?
100%.
Did you hear? I read the other day there was a bloke that actually sued Red Bull for a silly amount of millions and won in court because Red Bull didn't actually give him wings.
No way.
Yeah. And then now I think they've either taken it out or they say in the advertisement, like, doesn't really. Like,
unreal.
I wish I'd have thought of that.
Yeah, that's a good...
It was only like a couple of years ago as well. No one had ever thought about doing it.
That's a good lawsuit. There was a lady years ago in Spain who tried to sue the government for ownership of the sun.
Right.
She didn't win.
That's not right. Yeah, because the government don't own it either.
No one does.
But the main thing about religion is, when you first commented on about it, is growing up, as I said, I avoided it like the plague, because I just thought it seems too much of a control system, and especially the way it has been manipulated, and I would use the word molested these days, not literally, but figuratively.
Catholics.
I mean, they literally do it, but figuratively, they have, through using it as a control system or a way to control people and governments and large groups of people, they have taken away the main meanings behind it, haven't they? Because they always like serve your God, and then they'll act like they're some sort of deity that should be served when really you should serve your fellow man. You know, be a good person in your community. Look after each other. Look after your friends, your family, your kids. They're part of your family. But you know, and I think it is lost a lot in society these days.
Yeah, because it's the community, it's the accountability. If you are responsible to if you're responsible to a higher power, you're monitored to behave yourself, because you know it's like, oh, if you behave yourself, you'll get rewarded in the next life with heaven. But if you're a bad person, you're going to go to hell. Now you would come up with
no benchmark, is there?
Of what's good and bad. Yeah. Oh, what you mean now?
Yeah, without religion, and that's why as I've grown older, wouldn't say I'm religious, but I respect religion far more than I was at a younger age, because it sets clear boundaries for people to live by.
Well, there's no... Yeah, it does. But I think to your point, you're saying about there's no boundaries about right and wrong. There's still a remnant there, because we still overall... Like, where do you think laws came from? They would have come from... The key laws that would have built the land would have been remnants or adaptations of religious laws of don't steal, don't covet, don't kill, all that sort of stuff. And then obviously that's punishable by imprisonment, or up until not even that long ago, death. For doing that. But where I think religion for a long time served its purpose. Like if you look at *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, he was saying that religion was fantastic for humans because it helped us to govern one another. Because it was part of the myths we all believed in. Yeah. So law, for example, is a myth. It doesn't physically exist anywhere.
No, of course.
The company Peugeot is a myth. It doesn't physically exist. It just is. Okay, we all accept that this thing exists.
Yeah, they build cars, but they don't.
Yeah, Peugeot itself does not exist. They just have Peugeot warehouses, for example. But it's part of the collection of what he calls myths that we all agree to. We all agree about laws. They're not real, but we have agreed that they are real to install some sense of order. Same thing with the religion. So that's obviously what's good about it. Where people, as I was saying before, like if you are a good person and you get rewarded in heaven, or if you're a bad person, you go to hell. Where people have picked religion apart is that you shouldn't want to be a good person to avoid punishment. You should be a good person because you want to be a good person.
Yeah, exactly.
But then it's circular coming back to... Well, that if you then take that argument out, and how do we then define what makes a good person? If we're taking religion out of the equation, how do we know what's a good person without these laws, these religious laws to tell us what a good person is?
That's a good point. I mean, I think from a young age you know right and wrong, but again, is that because we've been taught it as we've grown up, or it's been instilled in us, or is that innate? And again, it's like government. I always thought growing up that the government we employ, or they govern by the rule of law, but they actually don't. They govern by the rule of what everybody agrees on. So it's not about what's right and wrong. It's about what everybody decides is right and wrong.
That's a long way where we're going to go with that, but let's try and go back to your initial question. How do we know from an early age what is right and wrong? So like from grassroots, from all of us growing up, how do you know what's right and wrong? There seems to be a collective agreement on certain things.
In the collective consciousness, I guess.
Yeah, so I would imagine that would be, evolutionarily speaking, it would be... We know right and wrong because what is right will benefit the group, and what is wrong will damage the group.
Yeah.
Effectively. But then so I think that's in nature for most people. For some people's nature, it will be, I'm going to burn the group down, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they're probably the small fraction of savages we needed evolutionarily. And as they grow up, they either grow out of it, or it gets beaten out of them, or whatever, or they end up in prison.
Well, until 50 years ago, every single man would be at war for a substantial period of their life.
Let's say
in order to grow and build their community.
Let's say World War II, so 70.
70.
Yeah, just for argument's sake, let's say World War II. Yeah.
So before that, how did they distinguish what was right and wrong if they're at war all the time?
I it would have been a combination of what I think then would have been still the same principles of what's the best for the whole, combined with in-group and out-group.
Mm-hmm.
So those people over there are different to us, therefore they're the out-group. We are the tribe. We need to survive. We're only going to survive if they don't.
Yeah.
Even 70 years ago, from that point.
It's sort of kill or be killed type thing.
Yeah. So if you have, if you have the savages, you want the savages that are few and far between, but in those circumstances, you want them. Like the founders of the SAS, the Churchill hunted down the most psycho British soldiers he could find and said, all of you are going to be put in a regiment together. I'm going to give you full autonomy, full funding, full this, full that, whatever. Do whatever you want. Just get this done.
Where we have to.
And he said, beyond that, don't tell me.
I suppose it in a way, it has to be done in certain circumstances.
In certain ones. Well, particularly at this particular turning point, because this was the English forces in... I think they were pushing against the Italians, because they were going through Egypt, they were going through Cairo, and it was where the Germans and the Italians were linking up to then push through and come up from the south. Yeah. And if it wasn't for the involvement of the SAS, because the English were getting pasted because of how incompetent the English logistics lines were, because all the men would get there, would travel in convoys, so hundreds of guys would travel in convoy, and then they'd run out of fuel halfway there, or they'd get there and there's no bullets. Yeah. And so the soldiers, the soldiers were there like, Jesus Christ. So that's when the SAS was formed.
But just to completely switch it up from the violent side of things, religion, do you think marriage came from religion, or do you think that was before? Because in terms of marriage, obviously, traditionally, you can only be married by a priest. Now, these days, I know it's slightly different. It's more, I guess it would be a lawyer, wouldn't it? If it's not a priest, technically it's got to be someone who's a tenant of the law, or... Yeah,
it's... I don't know what you call them now, but you can just get like ordained in quotes online. It's like a humanitarian event or something, or I don't know what the title is called now, but they it's just secular is what it is. So there's no God involved in any of this.
And do you still see value in marriage these days? So I read a statistic the other day that it was 53% of all marriages in the UK fail. So a high percentage of marriages fail. And that's 53% of marriages end in divorce. So a high percentage of marriages end in divorce. Now, if you think about it, there's going to be a certain percentage of that 47% of marriages where people aren't happy, but they stay together for whatever monetary reasons, or because they're scared to go out, or because that's all they know. So realistically, that 53% is the bottom line figure. There's going to be a high percentage of people that are in marriages that aren't happy or successful.
For sure, definitely. I don't know, Henry VIII kind of fucked with it all a little bit by creating divorce, because he did it just because he wanted to get out. Yeah. And
my point on that is, does it have an element back from religion, maybe because we've come away from religion in general, that our philosophies and our tenets of how we live by have changed?
Definitely, because if you... we've effectively replaced God with CCTV, ultimately.
What do you mean?
Well, because God's not looking at us, the cameras are.
How do you know God's not looking at the cameras?
True, true, God is absolutely watching. He created everything, and this is hands down his favourite shit. Yeah. For marriage, in the same way that we replaced God with CCTV, by adding the option for divorce, it's given people options to just been anything. So even
it gives an escape route, doesn't it, rather than building and working on the relationship.
Yeah, so 100% certain people should not be in certain relationships together. So it's not for us to deny them freedom,
Of course,
because it's effectively, indentured servitude or slavery, but you just can't get away from if there's no divorce. But because there is divorce as an escape hatch, people don't try as hard, because they're like, it gets a little bit hard, it's just divorce, whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think there's an element of social media involved?
Yeah.
Because everybody is so connected, or feels like they're so connected to everybody in the outside world, whereas, back in the day, you'd have had a small town, you'd know pretty much everyone in the town. You wouldn't know anyone outside the town other than your families and maybe the people in the town's families that don't live there, but everybody would sort of stay in the same, either work on farms or stay in the same towns. And these days we've got the opportunity for travel. Social media, all those types of things means you can connect with literally the whole world at your fingertips. And with that opportunity for choice, do you think it breeds complacency?
It's choice, and it's comparison being the thief of joy, because you're not just happy with what you've got. I mean, what we're looking at a symptom. We're not even looking at the root cause. We're talking about symptoms of, like, a divorce is a symptom, and people being unhappy in marriage is symptoms. We're not looking at causes. What makes people unhappy and want to break up in the first place? So we're not looking at why did you get together in the first place? Did you get together because you got pregnant and you felt you had no choice? Did you get together because you've been together since you were 12 and equally you feel like you should just stick it out? Did you get together because one of you or both of you was incomplete as a person and thought, and either felt and met someone who they felt that completed them, and then that completeness, that feeling of completeness didn't last? Because when people want to should be getting together, you should both be fully understood of who you are and how you are, with flaws and strengths as a person individually. So you both should know who you are individually, so that with or without someone else in your life, you are independent. And the coming together should be to fulfill that emotional need, as it were, and so then the two becoming greater than them separately. A lot of people are not self-sufficient enough, emotionally mature, financially, whatever, by themselves, and they seek another person to fulfill that.
Insecurity.
A massive insecurity, which
and they use that as an outlet to try and cover up rather than...
And they'll use that as, if I achieve this, that'll make me happy.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's turning... It's seeking validation and seeking fulfillment in an emotional commodity, as opposed to actually being happy in themselves and being fulfilled, and then wanting to share that with someone else.
Working on yourself and then sharing it with someone else, rather than
using that other person to fulfill yourself.
Leeching, if that makes sense.
Precisely, yeah. So a relationship should be symbiotic, but both of you being strong independently and bringing that strength together, as opposed to symbiotic, so then you're bringing it together, so it's leeching, so that you kind of form one person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what effectively you're doing when you have a child, isn't it? That is what you're doing. And I'll start by saying that I come from a line of
Smiths
and other family names, but as far back as my grandparents, I don't know much more than before, my great-grandparents, but there's been no successful marriages in our families. Most of them have been together for years, but for whatever reason, they've ended up, not together. Where it's my parents, all my aunties and uncles, and my grandparents from all sides. But I still believe in the institution of marriage as a whole. I still think, if you find, I don't want to say find yourself, because that sounds really ridiculous, but like we do, if we work on ourselves to the best of our ability and we meet someone who also does the same. How fantastic it would be to share the rest of your life with them rather than, bounce around from person to person. I still think, as a whole, it is a great thing for humanity, and also, yourself, your partner, your children, because you know that they're not just gonna, leave you at any moment. We all go through shit, don't we? We all have bad times at work, and we go through different stages. People die, and we'll go through mental hardship. And I think a lot these days, and you used to see it with Kevin Samuels. There was this one I watched, and honestly, I didn't know the lady, but I could have slapped her around. Seriously, I think she was going out with this man. They were married for, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. Then he got cancer. She didn't work. He worked, and when he got cancer, he started acting differently. So she divorced him. And I think Kevin Samuels turned around and said, "Look, your husband was dying, and because he was treating you differently, she didn't say he was like hitting her or anything like that. It wasn't like horrifically bad. He was just treating her differently and obviously being sad, and it was affecting his work, blah blah blah." And Kevin Samuels turned around and said, "So your man was going through like the worst moment of his life because he was dying, and you just left him because he wasn't treating you right. And you're like, you're not supposed to be there, like, to look after him through that time." And I think everybody's different, so it's not like everybody's going to do that. But I just think it's mad that there are some people out there that would do that.
Yeah, there's an option for it.
Yeah, and my point being on that is, if that was to ever happen to me, I obviously would never wish to treat my partner in a negative way, but it, as we said before, when there's an easy way out, it breeds contempt and it makes people weak. When you have to be strong, you haven't got the choice. You have to build yourself up in order to be a better person, and that's better for society all round. It's better for your family, it's better for your children, it's better for your community. And I think with the ability to, or at least the culture of people not working on their marriages these days, it's quite damaging.
Well, let's look at, talking about marriage and obviously how useful and brilliant it is, let's look at the people that, as we're no longer in a religious society, we have replaced God or gods with celebrities. People who we have.
I actually hate this.
People who we have good. People who
it
we have.
It winds me up so much that people deify these people.
100%. So we've deified these people, and these celebrities, be they film stars, singers, whatever, they go through marriages like you and I go through shits. Like, 2 or 3 times a day. They and some are really running. No. So
sounds like machine gun fire.
Yeah, well, some people, I'm trying to think of who it is, who's had like 7 or something stupid like that. But they ruin and destroy what's supposed to be a beautiful thing, is supposed to be the bedrock of our society and the family unit. Because it's not about building a life. It's not about building a stable relationship or a foundation for children. It's a social event. It's a party. It's this thing. And then it lasts, 6 months? And then they'll divorce. That'll be a big news story because we give a shit what this random bloke and this bird are doing. And then it'll happen again in 6 months' time. And that'll be a big story because we give a shit about what this random bird and this bloke are doing. It's like, why does anyone give a shit? And this is what bugs me about it is women I know give a shit. But they don't know these people. Those people don't know them. Why do you give a flying fuck what celebrities are doing? And these are not celebrities like the celebrities in quotes that you and I would talk about. Because we talk about people who have a message to impart. Yeah. Or they're ones who are exemplars of what it is to be a human in whatever field they're particularly in. Whether it be, Kiyosaki, Robert Greene,
Patrick
Bet Davis, Yuval Noah Harari, David Goggins. You and I, not deify, not idolise, but a lower down rung on that spectrum there. We look up to these people because they're like, wow, look how inspiring they are, look how motivating they are.
Well, yeah, that's what we get inspired by them because that's how we wish.
Yeah, we want to be like the character traits they exhibit. It's not that we think, oh, that man's a god. Some of the feats might be godlike because, like, how do you do that? But that's just, they're just an example of the indomitable will of the human spirit, as opposed to an actor on a fucking soap. A professional liar is what we pay them for, and somehow their opinion has value.
Well, so just stumbling across that, as we see those people you just mentioned, we see them as I don't want to say a beacon of light, but as in a way that we would like to act into the world, so we can be better people. Do you think on a lower level that the people that deify these celebrities that are just not really achieving anything, well, they are achieving, they're doing a lot better than I am monetarily, let's just put it there, because a lot of them, I can imagine, like Kanye West, fuck me, he's got a lot of money, but his life must be chaos. There's always some shit going on, isn't there?
His brain
and I respect Kanye, massively.
His brain is chaos. He's an unwell man, and people expect him to behave like a well human. It's just like, just leave him alone.
Yeah, his life must be very difficult.
Yeah, I would not want his life, because he's at that point where it's, the shit he was saying. He's worth all this money. They pulled his money away from him.
Yeah,
and it's just
but then, I think Adidas are giving it back now, haven't they?
Oh, that's nice of them.
Which I actually kind of respect, because he stood his ground. And then they all sort of realised, oh, actually.
Well, it's because he spoke to Jonah Hill, and Jonah Hill was like, yeah, he's all right.
Yeah.
But also, which is hilarious about Adidas, do you know what the name of the founder was of Adidas was?
Adi Dassler.
Adolf Dassler.
Yeah.
Yeah, created in the early 1900s. He's a fucking Nazi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was German, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they were like, and then, a Nazi-founded company was like, oh, this guy's saying things about Jews. Don't know about
that. Well, what car do you drive?
That's not the point, mate. What car do you drive? Oh no, never mind.
Yours is a VW.
Yeah, yours is made
literally created by.
Yours is made by Indians.
Well, made by the British, bought by the Indians.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like an odd
way
around, isn't it? It used to be made by the Indians, bought by the British.
Who owns? What have you got? Land Rover?
Land Rover. It's Tata Steel.
That's the company.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
It's one of the largest steel producers in the world.
Oh, interesting.
And they do trains, technology. It's not just a steel company.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I know like Volkswagen owns like BMW, Audi, Mercedes, Lamborghini. No, so
you said this
Porsche.
Before, so they do not
own. What do you mean?
They don't own Mercedes.
What are you talking about?
Or BMW.
What are you talking about?
VW.
I'm sure they do.
No, they don't. They do own Porsche, Bugatti.
Stop saying.
Lamborghini.
Okay.
Audi.
Cool.
But they don't. BMW is its own entity.
Okay. 2 out, 2 in. I'll take that. That's
and Mercedes is Daimler, which is doesn't actually really own anything. It owns Smart, and that's about
it. Yeah, Smart's that was a cute little experiment, wasn't it? You know how you get those parking bays on the side of the road where you come in sort of like sideway parallel parking to it. Whenever I see a smart car, they just reverse into it.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's ridiculous.
Anyway, how did we get away from marriage?
I was talking about how you were saying how obviously you were espousing the virtues of marriage, and I was saying how they cheapen it. These celebrities that everyone looks up to.
Yeah. So my partner said to me the other day, she was like, "Oh, do you know?"
Stop saying partner, by the way.
Oh no, but it puts people off. I love it.
Okay, fine.
I used to do it when I was working because they're like, Partner?
Yeah.
Is he talking about a man or a woman?
And you were like, we own a small food collective together. Yeah.
Automatically puts them on like
okay, carry on.
That edge.
So yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Anyway, me and my partner and I were discussing yesterday, and it does tend to be more of a female trait that are more interested in these celebrities.
Yep.
And she said, "Oh, Maya Jama, is that her name?
Hello.
May have completely made that up. And Stormzy have got back together, and I just said, look, I like Stormzy. I like his music. I'd pay and go and see him. But I'm actually really not interested in what his relationship status is. I really don't care. It doesn't mean anything to me. If I meet the guy and we become mates, then I might take some type of interest. But really, he's just a rapper that entertains me when I listen to his music.
Yeah,
really don't care about.
And we
I respect him as a person. You know, he's obviously done well coming up from where he's come from. But other than that, I don't really aspire to be him in any other way.
Well, we are governed by testosterone, not governed by estrogen. And we have the...
Do you think that has an element?
100%. In the same way that it, you know, difference in hormones, different in brain neurological structures, whereas they're more emotional, they care about relationships because relationships are vital to the female connectiveness, because they are all about forming relationships and making sure there's bonds everywhere. And they're very interested in that because, like, oh, there's a scandal, but you're like, ooh, you get all excited about it, but equally they're like looking at signs going, okay, why did they break up and how can I avoid that?
So they're learning from those situations.
From the human interactions and the relationship part of it. And also,
never thought about it like that.
There's a certain... The people that care about celebrity relationships are either people of a young age who will look at that because they're idolizing it, or they'll past a certain age, there'll be people of a certain socio-economic background. Because you're not doing well enough in your own life that you have to look at other people's from there.
And the ship has sailed. So.
Maybe.
Well, Ray Kroc would tell you the ship would never sail. I think if he didn't start McDonald's, even though he didn't start McDonald's.
He stole it.
Didn't steal McDonald's until he was 52, did he?
Yeah.
53, something like that.
Well, I mean, the Colonel was in his car for a very long time until KFC kicked off.
He was like 73 or something.
Crazy old, yeah. Abraham Lincoln tried to become president for 32 years.
Did he?
Yep. Tried every election, didn't happen, but he did not give up.
Fair play to him.
So he was old as shit when he became president.
But, you know, I'd never thought about it like that in terms of the sort of female interaction.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my missus is the same. When she's just going, oh, this relationship or this actor, she's like, oh, they're so cute together. And I'm like, cool. I've listened to Douglas Murray talk about this guy and just tear him apart. I was like, I don't care.
Who's Douglas Murray?
Douglas Murray is a political commentator. Okay. He's been on Williamson. I'm sure has he been on Rogan? Yes, he has. Yeah. Outstanding, fantastic. He wrote The Strange Death of Europe. He wrote The Madness of Crowds. He's incredible to listen to. Really, really good. Really, really good. He just talks a lot of the topics that you and I have strong opinions of. He's a very strongly voiced gay man who is coming out against all of these things, like I can't remember the name of the company, but it's the institution or the charity that for the longest time was standing up for gay rights in the UK. I can't remember what it's called. It's going to be really obvious later on. But what their policies are now is incredibly harmful to sort of gay rights. Is what he's saying as a gay man. Again, this is just what he said. I haven't looked into it, so therefore I'm as credible as the BBC. But
more credible even.
More credible. But yeah, he's just incredibly eloquent and just really, really impassioned and makes some really, really good points. So he's an awesome person to listen to. Just
have to get on it.
Just in general. What was I saying? I don't know why I brought Douglas Murray. Oh, because talking about celebrity couples. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, I don't understand why you give a shit about relationship status of other people. Like, you know, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. It's like, I don't give a fuck.
Well, he's done well, hasn't he? I think he started like a mobile company.
Did he?
It was like rivaling like T-Mobile or whatever, then sold it for like a stupid amount of billions. He owns Wrexham Football Club now. So I hope he does well there. I mean, I wish he'd just buy fucking Reading.
He's great. He's so good.
At least we could have some money.
Well, would you know his business partner, Rob McElhenney, with Wrexham. So Ryan Reynolds bought Wrexham with Rob McElhenney, who's the creator of Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. And he's so clever. If he's someone who's a creator of a TV show and puts yourself in the most ridiculous, stupid role. So he puts himself as the idiot, as the one who's always so stupid, who's just like screaming at people and stuff. And for some he deliberately as a character got obese, So Rob in real life got obese just because it's funny for the character. Then lost all the weight and then got stupidly jacked for no apparent reason. And he actually does that in the show as well. It's just like for no reason whatsoever. But what I love about the show is that you've got.
So he's in Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, he's the creator and one of the main characters.
Who does he play?
Mac.
Mac, yeah, I know.
Mac. Yeah. You know just how shredded he is. You're like, what the fuck? But he's married to Caitlin Olsen, who plays Dee, the lead female character.
The blonde one, yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got Charlie Day, who plays Charlie Kelly in Always Sunny, and he's married to Mary Elizabeth, who is in Always Sunny as well. But
which one's Mary Elizabeth?
She plays the waitress, who Charlie is always trying to pursue, and she hates him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. And that is awesome because that show is a comedy, and there are a couple in real life. There's 2 couples in real life there, but they are diametrically opposed in the show.
So Matt, you've just confessed that you're interested in the relationship status.
Ah, right, you caught me.
Of these celebrities.
Fine. No, I only care that they've made it funny, and they fucked with the dynamic of going, these 2 characters who hate each other in the show are married in real life. That's brilliant.
So that's where Mac and the blonde girl, they're always at it.
Always at each other. Well, Mac has put himself as gay, so you're just like fantastic.
Since when?
Season 10.
Oh, okay.
10 or 11.
I think I only got up to about season 6 or 7.
Oh mate, it gets progressively more insane.
Does it? I need to watch it because it was always funny.
It's so good. It's so good. Mr. Max, we've done very well today.
Nice way to end.
We've done very, very well.
Brilliant.
Excellent stuff.
Nice to see you.
And to yourself, mate.
Thank you, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us on our new studio layout.
I know. I quite like it. It's very good.
Please like and subscribe.
And make sure we'll carry these on next time.